ability, as far as how to draw realistically. So there is air, there is form, but I will deliberately break some things. I'll deliberately shift things, so it's not going to be anatomically correct. My goal is to make it kind of warm and like almost like child's dream or something like that. A little bit naive. Okay, so I was like, I forgot.
What media are you working?
I will be working in acrylic, and I only brought few colors, and I plan to use a so-called limited palette. So mostly I'll be using earth pigments like ochre, red oxide, raw umber, Payne's gray, then white, and that's about it. Maybe I'll use a little bit of red at the end. I don't know, I'll see. So, but at the beginning, just some drawing. So I work still general to specific approach. At first I try to find places for everything. So I'm using very loose, thin lines because I don't want anything to be permanent yet, but because I might want to move it a little bit. And so because of that, I'm using very light lines at this moment. But as soon as I will kind of know what's going on, I will start making more heavy lines, and then on top of my drawing, I'll start using paint, just a paintbrush. Okay, so this is good enough. At this point, I can go a little bit harder on my lines. Very loose. I'm not trying to be precise. Wherever I will need some more precision later, I'll do it with the brush. Okay, this is it basically. I don't know, can you see it? Okay, yeah, great, wow. Technology could be good. So this is going to be a snail here. Here is a face of that person. Okay, so yeah, I only have 1 centimeter left, but this wasn't a... Okay, so at this point I'll just take one of my brushes and I'll use a little bit of raw umber here, or maybe, yeah, burnt umber, a little bit of burnt umber maybe. No, take raw. Okay, so here I have my my palette. So what I do for palette often when I work with acrylic, I like using these things like when I buy dates, I buy them in these containers, and then they're very good, handy, and then so that way I can reuse them, upcycle them or whatever. And then for palette, what really works for me is when you go buy fish. At grocery stores, they give you a freezer paper, sort of, they wrap it. So, and that paper looks so nice when it's there, so nice and clean. And probably when they make that paper, those papers think, oh, we're going to be so cool somewhere in cool place. And then suddenly, wow, dead fish, wow. No. But then what I do, after I do my fish, I reuse them. So then this paper gets excited. Oh, finally, we deserve to be with an artist. So, And it works very well. So it works very well.
Maybe.
Someone says something smells fishy.
Yeah. Well, no, it's Igor.
All right, so I'll start following my lines with my brush.
Have you thought of designing hats? Snail hats.
So what are you using? What type of paint?
What's that?
Yeah, but the brand.
Oh, the brand of the paint.
For some reason, I really like Liquitex. I find their colors extremely balanced. Their raw umber looks like raw umber. Their Payne's Gray is Payne's Gray. You know, so I love it. This brand, and mostly I use that brand. This brand. So at this point, I will just follow my lines, and at the same time, I will be thinking about source of the light. Most likely, I want my light to come from here. So, and because I've done very many studies with real objects, you know, like still lifes or real objects outdoors, you know, like this painting of building in Balboa Park. This was done on location in Balboa Park, Spanish Village, using oil paint. And yes, it is about this building, but also it is about the drama of the light, because when light hits it, it makes it very interesting. And especially in this case, the person goes under that arch and suddenly the light hits that person. And that's the culmination, the moment of the drama of light. So yes, we see the building, but most likely this painting is about the light, about how that light goes through that object. So basically, I've used that object to catch the light, to tell the story about the light. So you wanted to ask something, no?
The price.
Huh?
The
We want to
price.
hear the price of your paint.
Oh, you can ask me later. Yeah. So let's not waste time on that. So as you see, like I work with loose paint here, and when I do this, we can still see the, you know, my whatever I had as on that support. We see the underpainting, and we see some of those white patches. So that will help me create some interesting textures. In some places, some areas later, I will be using opaque paint. In some cases, I don't mind if my paint runs. If it will run, maybe eventually I will actually use it in some areas. So
You use it more like watercolor.
at this point, yes, but later I'll start painting opaque. But at the beginning, yes, I basically paint translucent. So it's sort of similar to fresco technique. Fresco technique was used a lot in Italy. In fact, it's an Italian term, fresco. Fresco means fresh because what they did, they painted on fresh cement. You know, they would, for example, it would have to be a huge mural, but they would work in pieces, whatever they would be able to complete in one day while that cement is still wet. And so what happened, they worked with egg tempera, and those murals today are as bright as they were 600 years ago, because what happens when that egg tempera mixes with that cement and then it dries with it, it's not going anywhere, just like ceramics. So it's not going anywhere. So that's the beauty of al fresco painting. Okay, so at this point I will work slightly.
Still made with egg?
Some of it, yes, some of it. So at this point, while I'm still working on my sort of underpainting, I'm working loose and translucent, but also at the same time, I'm thinking about what's going to happen. I'm making some decisions, you know. So I have to start about light shadow at this point. So, and then the background. For the background, most likely I want it to be cooler, and one of the reasons for that is because I'm using limited palette, so I don't have. It's going to be very subtle, you know, called mostly tonal, lighter, darker, but also cooler and warmer. And because I want this to be warm, most likely I want the background to be slightly on the cool side. So that way there will be some sort of juxtaposition. Darker and cooler background will make the face of that person even warmer. So, and as you see here, I'm working translucent. And we can still see the that ground through my paint here. And I'm working just with household brush, very loose. Sometimes it's better for this kind of technique. Sometimes it works better if you work flat, but because of our situation here, I decided to go vertical so you could better see it. And as you see, my goal right now is just to block in some areas to make it slightly darker, slightly cooler, and from there I will move further.
Is that Payne's gray you're using?
Right now Payne's gray, but because, like as I mentioned before, Liquitex like their Payne's gray because Payne's gray, when mixed with white or when used translucent, it's supposed to be cool. So right now it looks blue, but it does look blue simply because it's juxtaposed to some warmth here. So I'm just blocking it in. Also, I'm not sure I will be using it today, but there is Liquitex sells a lot of good products like I might be using some gloss varnish and painting media by Liquitex. What that does basically, it helps you make things more translucent, gloss, medium, and varnish. And also, it works very well as a final varnish. So if you want to work using glazing, then it's a very good product. Okay. So from here, it looks like I might have to use a little bit of opaque paint. And what I will do, I'll just take white, titanium white. Also, they have a couple of very good things like unbleached titanium and also parchment. Those work very well, but I'm just using minimal today, and so I will just use white, and I'll use some yellow ochre because I want my light to be warm. Light and warm. So what I will do right now, I'll mix some paint, and it will be warm, and it will be light, and it will be opaque. So with that, what I'll do, I'll block some areas which are not going to be translucent. They're going to be opaque mostly. And because I know the source of light is here, so I know exactly where, I will be applying my lights. Light, so shadows will be on the left side. Nose, cheek here. Some light here. Some light here. And then upper eyelid. So at first there was just nothing. And gradually there was nothing, but that person and that snail were already there. And so gradually they're appearing, and at the end, hopefully, if I have enough time, then we will see them in all their beauty. But right now I'm just applying light. And as I said, I want this painting to be naive, deliberately kind of little bit primitivistic, but it's not because I cannot draw. If I have to, I will draw person realistically, just like I did this in this live painting session, because I was trained to draw and paint realistically, working with whatever objects life is going to throw at me. So, but because I have a lot of previous experience doing that, for me, figuring out light shadow is not such a big deal, because I know rules. Now if I have to break them a little bit, I can do that, but I can do that knowing what exactly I'm doing, not just because of some sort of accident. Okay, and here there will be some flowers. Person is holding some flowers, so I'll just randomly do that. Later it will become more organized. So at this point, shadow, light, cool, warm, limited palette. So I want to keep developing it, keep building it up. So at the end we have that statement. So at this point, I'll go back to my shadows, and because my my light is warm, then my shadows will be cool. If you go outside right now, you will see wherever there is sunshine, the sunshine is yellow, red, orange, and then shadows are purple, blue, right? So warm light, cool shadow, cool light, warm shadow. So this is a simple thing that, yes, it's always like that. If in the winter you go outside, there is snow is white, but no, it's yellow and orange, and all shadows are blue. Remember how it is? We don't get much snow here, but anyway. So I'll start working on my shadows a little bit. And still, I will be making them sort of like translucent. See, I'm kind of trying to sculpt that form, to actually sculpt those forms using chiaroscuro, which is an Italian term. It means light shadow. Chiaroscuro, light shadow. So that is how I will make that those imaginary objects and things, I will make them look three-dimensional. So gradually we will see them better and better. Okay, and now shadow under this hut. I know it's there because my source light, light source is higher and to the right or to the left of that form. So I know because light hits it like this, so there will be some shadow under this hut, so it's going to be right there. And then there will be some shadow here on his or her cheek. We don't know if it's a girl or a boy. It will be for you guys to decide at the end. For me, it doesn't matter because it's not about that person. It's basically more like a story about this personality, very pure, very naive, kind of like in child, when you're a child, you see things differently. So it's that kind of feeling. Okay. So we see a little bit more of that. So from here I'm not going to stop. I'll keep on working. Let me think about what I want to do right now. I want to keep building it, keep making it more real, real. And then as far as background, I want to work on my background a little bit more right now. Here I decided to go a little bit darker, and the reason why I'm doing it is because, and I'm not the one who invented it, but I just know that if you want to emphasize light, then you want to, on this side, then you want the background, the background be darker. And then just the opposite, we'll do just the opposite on that side. We will make this dark, and then the background will be slightly lighter. So that way it will look like more space, more like real space. And you see how in some areas, whatever I had as background, now it really works for me because it picks up that texture. It makes it much more complicated than it actually is. So it kind of saves time, at the same time helps me create this illusion of some sort of depth and then mysteriousness, sort of slightly darker here as well. Mystery, like an old wall, old texture. And here I'm not necessarily using my knowledge about perspective. As a matter of fact, here deliberately I'm making this eye a little bit lower. I'm doing it because I want that way I will help to make this statement. So it is not a real person, but imaginary. So it's not someone in particular, but it's just some idea of this naive kind of naive feeling. Okay. So at this point, I can go ahead and make things a little bit more specific. For instance, at this point, I'll go ahead and I'll make few highlights. And I know the highlight is going to be here because I know the source of the light is here. So it will hit this object somewhere here very strong. And then also here, I'll try to make things a little bit more specific. So at this point, because I already have that, I already built up some of those forms, at this point I'm trying to just be a little bit more specific with them, so make them a little bit more like real. Highlight here, highlight here. A little bit lighter here because it will be more open to the light. Here, a hat here. The light is going to hit this thing here, the tail of that snail. Okay. Here, few highlights on the face. Here, 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 here. So as you see at this point, I'm just trying to sculpt that form a little bit better. Sculpt because even though I'm working on a two-dimensional surface basically, but I'm trying to create this imaginary space. So, and that in that imaginary space, I make decisions, and that's why it's so exciting, because it's just my world right there, and I build my world there, and I actually sculpt it, just using my knowledge of chiaroscuro, light shadow. Lighter here because it is closer to the light. Let's go and do that hand. Lighter, 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 lighter. Here, here, here. So that's how I'm making a little bit more three-dimensional. Okay, so now at this point, as I said before, I want this to be darker, but then the light behind it I want to be slightly darker. At this point, I'm making decision to start using a little bit of red oxide, because at this point I want to use a little bit more color. So a little bit more color, but still I am only using earth pigments that are basically made of, you know, clay, earth pigments, clay. So a little bit more red. So I didn't know it at the beginning, but at this point I'm feeling more like a redhead. And still, see, wherever I can, I use a little bit of that background, and I still paint translucent. See, at this point I decided to make hair slightly longer, and then I will use a little bit of this red oxide for these chicks. Still translucent. Okay. And a little bit more here. So remember how at the beginning my canvas looked like winter camouflage. You know, when in the winter, if we had a lot of snow and we were to expect some Russian tanks coming, so we would have that kind of camouflage. That was the color of my canvas there. Did I overdo it? No.
Was it plain air at the time?
See, and then I'm using a little bit of that color in a few other areas. Okay. All right, so, and now here, as I said before, I want the background behind the hair to be slightly lighter. Remember how I said here I want it to be darker. And now slightly lighter here in the back. Darker background where we have a light area, and then we have a dark shadow here, but here I do just the opposite. I make that background slightly lighter. So as soon as I did that, you see how we have more space. We kind of fill the area around and still cool here. If someone could help me and tell me like how much more time do I have? So I have to.
It's 3 o'clock now.
So we still have plenty of time, right? About maybe 30 more minutes at least for this.
Oh, at least.
Okay, sweet. So we're gonna make it much better. All right. So I'm more or less happy with the progress I'm making on this one. Now it's time to go ahead and make more things. Just in case, I brought a little bit of ultramarine, and I think what I'll do to make it slightly more kind of cheerful, I want to try a little bit of cooler temperature. So I hope if I do that, it will make it a little bit more intense as far as color, and as a result, we'll add a little bit of, a little bit of cheerfulness. So we'll make it a little bit more cheerful. And I don't want that blue to be aggressive, so that's why I'm mixing my ultramarine with a little bit of Payne's Gray. So Payne's Gray will make that ultramarine slightly less aggressive. And as you see, as soon as I put more coolness there, it makes color vibrate a little bit better for me. Okay. All right, so now it's even more naive. I like it. So now what I will do, I'll put some white between that blue there. Okay, okay. Now I want to make the inside of eye slightly lighter as well. Okay, so as you see, we're gradually building it. Now I want to add a little bit of green for the leaves of the flowers, but because I don't have a green, and I don't have it because I deliberately didn't bring it, because I've planned limited palette. In the limited palette exercise, you are forced to make decisions. When you have less colors, when your palette is smaller, then it forces you to really paint, to really be inventive. If you don't have green in this case, how can we make it? How can we fake it? So what we will do, we'll take ochre, which we do have, it's an earth pigment, and we add a little bit of Payne's gray in it, plus a little bit of white. That will make it look greenish, especially when juxtaposed to red, because red and green are two complementaries. We will not have actual green, but whatever we will mix by using ochre, Payne's gray, which is cool, and a little bit of white, when it will be put next to red, because of that juxtaposition, because red, green are two complementaries, that red will make that fake green look more intense. But as a result, we will not have a salad, but we will have more like a harmonious. So it will look green. It will not actually be, because I don't have green pigment here. So anyway, sorry about this long explanation. So I take ochre, I take white, I take drop of Payne's gray, and we will see if it will make fake green for us here. Yes, it will, but we will have to go slightly darker. With acrylic, you also have to keep in mind that acrylic, when dries, will look slightly darker than it looks like when it's wet. It's because the binder inside of the paint, it has white in it, so it looks white. But when that binder dries, it becomes translucent. So it therefore becomes darker. Does it look green to you? No. Yeah. It does. If you call well, that's green. Come here, you will see it looks green.
Yeah.
In some other case, I would love to use green, and I would make it vivid and bright and crazy, but not in this case, because in this case, the result I'm trying to achieve is supposed to be very subtle. You know, the color.
It looks green.
See it now? It looks green, of course. Okay, so at this point. So everything is all right. At this point, I feel like adding more definition to, I want to make things more kind of like, I want to make them, do them so they would look more real. At the same time, my goal is not to make it dry, boring, not to make it photographic, still keep it loose and painterly. Just do enough so it looks a little bit more real. Okay. Also, I have this strong desire to make my red slightly more intense. And I have just a little bit of red, because how naive it is, I don't think it would hurt if I will make this character's lips slightly more red and more kind of on the cute side, because it's supposed to be naive like this, okay? And at the same time, while I have this red on me, I'll try to put few red ones here. Oh, appreciate it. Oh, thanks. Okay, so more and more kind of done. So at this point, I will just try to give it a little bit more definition in few areas. Just a little bit more definition, so just suggest some hair.
You're in charge, or is she in charge? We have a break if there's snacks.
Igor, if you'd like a break, just let us know.
Oh, guys, it's entirely up to you. If it was up to me, I would keep painting till like the rest of forever. But because it's your event, so I leave it up to you. All this decision making.
I hate to cover something.
Igor, when you're painting, do you have a lot of fun?
It's just like, that's why I hate doing paperwork,
Yeah.
because there's always choice. These days, I work at my home studio, and whenever I have something boring to do, I always know my palette is there, and I kind of tomorrow. It's a lot of fun. So now I'm also thinking, I want to try to separate that hat from that snail. And it's a hard decision. I'm thinking blue or I'm thinking ochre. Most likely it's going to be ochre. We don't want much blue here. So I will take a little bit more ochre. And I think most likely I want it to be kind of gold, ochre, but because I don't want it to look yellow, I'm using a little bit of raw umber, adding a little bit of raw umber to my ochre, which will make it a little bit more subtle. And as you see, when I paint, I try not to cover some areas, because I want to use some of that background, some of that texture there. Because otherwise, if I will cover too much of it, I might lose that feeling of old world, like distressed surfaces and old surfaces, you know. So I want to preserve that. I don't want to get rid of that. Okie doke.
Okay, Igor.
Okay, let's take a break.
It's up to me, so you're in?
Yes.
All right, anybody who is
What
interested, I'll make a
happened to
list.
the portraits in here of the musicians?
He is, Sergio is a guy who paints as he plays these instruments, and he's become really popular, so he's been selling every summer. So that's where we're going to.
48 by 48, excuse me.
But you don't have to, she just said, she said.
But you said 36.
Okay. Are we gonna go back to Igor now?
Now we're back to Igor.
Okay.
Everybody?
Canvas.
But yes.
While we've been talking, Igor's been painting.
Can I focus on Igor again?
It's okay. I mean, I'm just doing my job. That's all.
No, you're not, you're just having fun.
So what I'm doing, I'm still trying to define things to give it a little bit more definition and make it a little bit more three-dimensional.
Now, Igor, you intentionally are making the eyes, the pupils different.
Oh,
You said that had to do with the dreaminess or something like that?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Maybe she had the same cider I had, I don't know.
What's that? I didn't understand what.
Oh, your intention of, and the difference in the eyes. I know it's a
Well, yes.
style. It's a style, I understand.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm making it a little bit more kind of naive. So if it was a normal painting, these eyes are supposed to be on the same level.
Yeah.
But this one, I moved a little bit that way. I do it deliberately to emphasize that I am not trying to paint realistically. It is an imaginary thing, you know. So that's why I'm doing it. So I use some elements of, you know, three-dimensional situation, light, shadow, but at the same time, I'm not, at the beginning I knew that it's not my plan to make realistic painting here. So that is why in some areas I make things wrong deliberately. more definition. When I do that, I still use this from general to specific, but then from specific back to general. So when you work on certain piece, you always have to, make some things more precise, some areas more busy, more defined, but at the same time, every now and then you want to step back and make sure that those details, whatever you did, they're not making things dry in the sense of like boring. So more details is good, but only for as long as it doesn't interfere with the statement of your painting. So you don't want your painting to be just a painting about bunch of details. You want to make a strong statement. So and as you see, I'm still working on making these things more precise, more naive. I'll put some highlights on the hair, but with that, again, I will try to be careful. I will try not to overdo it. I will try not to put too much emphasis or too much attention. I will just suggest it in few areas, and the rest, my viewer will have to, I don't want to give too much information. I want to leave some space so the viewer could finish whatever the way they want in their imagination. But it's not always like that. In some other styles, for instance, if we take photorealism, then the goal of an artist is just the opposite, is to make it photorealistic. A little bit more definition on that bouquet right now, except for first I will do this. More definition yet.
Igor, what would you call this painting? What would the title be? No.
I would call it province motif. I'm not sure. In Russian, I would say провинциальный мотив. So province, it's province. Province, it's like not big city, but country and
Provincial.
provincial. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sorry. My English is still not.
The attack of the country snails.
Yeah, you could give your opinions, and then we would pick the best. We can vote on the best one.
Do you have the title, James? You put the title.
How about escargot?
Escargot, yeah.
Escargot?
Escargot.
Escargot.
Like it's gone.
Escar chapeau. Don't help me. Don't my elbow. Get clean from my garden. I just get words.
See, now people are starting to think. Yeah.
So now I'll make few highlights. See, now that I have a base, I have pretty much my base. Now at this point, I am more free to play with it a little bit, because again, it's going back to my traditional education, general to specific. And then, I'm sure you know what I mean, like sometimes when you work on a piece, you suddenly kind of want to have a desire to focus in certain area. For instance, you want to make that eye, and you can. But then when you pay too much attention to it later, it might be out of context. So you want to have what traditional school does for you. It trains you. It gives you this discipline. There is a little voice in your head, little thing in your head, and for instance, you work on it, and then it wants to corrupt you. It says, okay, forget about that, focus on the tie, do it, you can do it. But then little voice in your head go, no, general to specific. And then it just becomes second nature. That's what traditional training does to you. No matter what you do, you always have that idea in the background. No matter what you do, it's under that idea. Idea is primary. Whatever you do, your technique, your things, it all has to be in agreement with that idea.
What if you have many ideas?
Well,
One.
the basic rule is you don't want too many voices inside of your head. One is okay. Too many, no good.
I'm good up to 30. You have an argument in your head.
So yeah, I mean, that's what I always strongly suggest, because I see a lot of very talented people, and but sometimes because they don't have that discipline, they get carried away. So that's why I think it's always important.
Now, is that Payne's gray again, but you've made it opaque, or?
Oh yeah, I just made it thicker, so it's Payne's gray. Yeah, as I said, in this case, I'm using very limited palette, and oftentimes when you see a beginner painting, that beginner puts all his or her paint on the palette, and it looks pretty, but then it confuses you. The less, the better, usually. So Picasso was a great, powerful artist, and he knew his things. And one of his quotes was, if you are so powerful that you can control 10 elements, go down to 2. So, which means if you have 10 paint and you could still make a harmony using those 10, it means that you are very good, because it's very tough not to make a mess when you use too many things. But he's saying if you are as good as to make it, to control 10 elements, go down to 2, which means when you limit yourself, that makes you more like boom, so it makes you more powerful, because there are less chances that you will mess it up, less chances to be corrupt. So it's like the less the better, oftentimes, So I don't know how much more time I have, but I will just paint a little bit more. We'll add a few things here. This painting, it would be good, the winner, it would be good to eventually varnish it a little bit, and you could varnish it using that product or some sort of satin varnish for acrylic paint. Not too glossy, not too matte.
What's the name of that?
Liquitex. This actually can work as a final varnish. It's
Liquitex what?
Liquitex, gloss, medium, and varnish. Gloss, medium. You can use it as a medium for painting, which I didn't do today, or you can use it as a final varnish. Good stuff. But for this one might be slightly too glossy. So what I would recommend is not too glossy, not too matte, which is satin. So as you see, in few areas I'm trying to make things slightly sharper and slightly more defined. Trying at the same time not to, overdo it, not to make it dry, so it still looks painterly and sort of not even handmade, sort of like loose. Just a few things here. Suggestion that there is some vegetation there. Some sort of mysterious garden of a dream. So what, when you do things like this, you get carried away. You're like, time does not exist, you are there in your imaginary space. Nobody else is there but you. And so it's a very pleasant feeling. And then if you really mean it, if you do it right, if you have some knowledge of process and tools and your supplies and things, then at the end you make some sort of statement and people take it home. They give you a little bit of money for that, which helps you buy more art supplies. But at the same time, the main idea is that's what art is about. It's not just about making pictures or making sounds or making some statues and stuff. It's also like, it makes, again, Picasso, one of his quotes is, art helps to remove the dust of regular life or something like that. So, which, if you mean it, if you put some good energy in there and it leaves, it means that if you meant well and if you really knew what you were doing and that energy is there, it's gonna stay there. And so if your energy was good, it will make this world better a little bit, So that is why it's so exciting, because it's not only you enjoy it, but then also if you make it good and it leaves. At the same time, whatever you put there, if you are good, so it's a power. You could make things, you could put good energy or you put bad energy, and so we have choices. But that's what art is about, because, when we don't know much about Greek people or Egyptians, but we know about them because of their art, their food is rotten a long time ago, whatever things, but we have their artifacts. We know them by their art. So if you ask me, art is like the best thing in the world. It's like tip of civilization. We need cars, we need things, and but at the end of the day, art what really makes makes the difference, you know. So anyway, I'm almost done here.
You know, Igor, there was a gentleman, one of our homeless veterans, that Carrie and Matt they organized a stand down for us where they were taking care of the homeless veterans. And there was a veteran last year who told me, a good artist knows when to stop. And actually, he wrote that to me because I never stopped. So when do you know when to stop?
That's a good question. Like right now, I feel like stopping, but
Stop.
it's hard because okay. All right. Just one more thing. I'm gonna sign it.
Can we take a picture of you next to it?
Yes, please. Yes, please. Yeah, and please also, if you want, you could take a look at some of my other pieces